Hey guys, great to be with you on Sunday in Sandhurst. We looked at Mark chapter 6, where Jesus is feeding the 5,000 men plus women and children as well. And we looked at it from the perspective of what do you do with the responsibilities that God has given you when it can seem a little overwhelming. The disciples thought they were going on a retreat with Jesus. When they get to the shore, where this desolate, isolated place, they were looking forward to some time out with him. When they get there, they realize there's crowds and crowds of people. And Jesus has compassion on them. He doesn't send them away. He teaches them all day. And we imagine, like, if that was me, if I was a disciple, I would be like, please just get rid of them. Then it gets to meal time. They've got nothing to eat. They come up to Jesus and say, now it's time to send them away. So they can go and find something, go and buy something to eat. And Jesus says this to them, which completely ruins their day, I think. He says, you give them something to eat. You give them something to eat. And we're looking at, well, what do you do when you think, Jesus, how can I cope with the responsibility you seem to be giving me? And that's when we get into, when they go away and look, they've got 5 loaves and 2 fish, that's all they've got. For what might have been up to 15,000 people, something like that. How on earth are they going to feed them? And that's what we were looking at. We get into the way that you get into a principle of multiplication. And it works like this. They find what they've got, just almost nothing, 5 loaves, 2 fish. They bring it to Jesus and he blesses what they have got and then gives it back to them to distribute amongst the people. And so we were saying, well, how do we cope with the responsibilities and the people in our lives and the groups and the ministries and the teams that we're part of, whether that be in church or at home or in work or in family groupings, whatever it might be. How do we cope with that? How do you get into this principle of multiplication? Well, bring all that you have to Jesus, number one. That's our first responsibility. That's our part in it. And the second part was give away whatever he tells you to do. And we looked at examples of that from money. We looked at examples of that from a lady in your congregation, Becca, who'd done that with a classroom of kids. We looked at examples of that in a team serving in church. We looked and talked about life groups themselves. So maybe life groups, you're thinking, how am I going to cope with all these people? Well, bring the whole group to Jesus to be blessed. And then give it away, give parts of it away, maybe multiply in order to deal with it. So that was what we were looking at on the day, and we ended with a minute or so just of silence, asking the Holy Spirit, what are you doing? What are you telling me? What area of my life do I need this principle of multiplication to get into? And how do I put first things first? How do I bring all of that to you, Jesus, that you might bless it? And then listen to you for when you're telling me to give something away. So those are the questions for you guys today as you're looking at it in your groups this week. What is God putting his finger on in your life that he's saying, bring the whole thing of that area of your life to me to be blessed? What is that at the moment that perhaps you're holding back for yourself, or you're thinking, I have to control and be in charge of it, and overly worried about the responsibility of it? What is that thing that Jesus is saying, bring it to me and I will bless it? And then second of all, what's he saying? And now I want you to give this away. So have a think about that in your groups today. Come up with as many examples as you can from all areas of life and help one another.